Welcome back, guys. AnimeScale here. Today, after the Jonin, the Akatsuki, and the Uchiha clan, we're also giving the KAGE list an update. I've talked about a lot of these people on different lists before, but today we're going to be doing a proper deep dive. There are lots of entries on this list, so now let's get started. Starting off this list with Chojuro. Unlike a lot of other people, I'm not going to rank the current KAGE in Boruto super high just because they landed a minor hit on an Otsutsuki or anything. I'll be looking at them based on what they can actually do, and based on what he can do, Chojuro is probably the weakest KAGE. I mean, the only technique he has are water-style techniques, and even those aren't very strong. Besides that, even the sword he has isn't one of the most impressive amongst the 7 swords. Sure, he did survive against Kinshiki, but that was mainly because Sasuke was involved. Plenty of times in Naruto, we've seen someone way weaker sort of take on someone way stronger than them. Does anyone remember Alba trying to fight Kakazu? Chojuro isn't a pushover, but I see him as the weakest KAGE. Now we're going to be taking a look at GAARA from the Kazekage rescue arc. This version of GAARA gets usually overlooked because Deidara managed to capture him with relative ease. Now in that situation, just like Naruto with Momoshiki, GAARA was more worried about the damage that Deidara could do to the village and the citizens than anything else. All in all, I'd say he's equal to, or at least slightly stronger than Deidara, which isn't bad at all. Next on the list is GAARA's father. We know that when he was alive, he was strong enough to subdue Shukaku, and that he could use Magnet Release, which allowed him to use Gold Dust the same way that GAARA could use his sand. Remember that Gold Dust is heavier than regular sand, so Rasa's ability with Magnet Release is quite impressive considering that in the Jutsu clash with his son, the amount of dust and sand were the same. In this battle, feelings and regrets played a huge role, keeping Rasa from going all out against his son. However, we know for certain that he wasn't exactly the strongest Kazekage, with the third stated to be the strongest in the history of the sand at the beginning of Shippuden when Rasa was already dead. As we just said during the Kazekage rescue arc, the third Kazekage was stated to be the strongest Kage the sand has ever had, which immediately puts him over Rasa and the GAARA of that arc. He could use Magnet Release to make Iron Sand, which seems to be the strongest and most versatile type of sand in Naruto. We've seen how strong Iron Sand is with Shinki and Boruto. I mean, Boruto literally needed Purple Lightning to win that fight. We don't know how the third died to Sasori, but since he did, I now scale him slightly below the Puppet Master. From the sand to the Mist Village, we have the 4th Mizukage, Yagura. As Jinchuriki of the 3 Tails, he could use its chakra all the way up to the version 2 Cloak, giving him access to mini-tail beast bombs, one of the strongest techniques around. Even in his base form, he was shown incredibly powerful techniques, like the Water Mirror technique, used against Bee and Naruto. With this jutsu, Yagura creates his mirror made out of water that makes a perfect copy of any attack thrown at it. However, Yagura also has plenty of bad showings too. Despite being as strong as he is, he did end up losing to Itachi's first ever Amaterasu, and he got unknowingly controlled by Obito for years. Sure, it's Itachi and Obito we are talking about, but I find it hard to scale Yagura higher than 4 Tails Naruto. That has a lot more chakra and destructive power than this form of Yagura has ever shown. We haven't seen a ton of KUROTSUCHI as a KAGE. She did briefly immobilize Kinshiki alongside Chojuro, but that was with the help of Sasuke, who distracted the Otsutsuki by slamming him with a Chidori. Against Fuse Momoshiki, she was completely useless, and quite literally got one shot. She definitely isn't anywhere near Otsutsuki level, like some people think, and yes, those people do exist. Still, that doesn't mean she's useless. She can use fire, water, and earth release, and is definitely no slouch at taijutsu either. She can also use lava release, letting her use jutsus like volcanic ash. Unlike someone like Onoki, however, she doesn't really have anything as broken as particle style, or the ability to fly, so I can't put her any higher. Mei is one of the few ninjas with 2 Kekkei Genkai, lava and boil release. Her techniques are no joke, with her being able to literally melt Sasuke's skeletal Susanoo. This is a fight she probably would have won, considering how drained Sasuke was at this point. She can also use water, fire, earth, and lightning release, but water release is definitely her strong suit. In the War arc, Mei was able to negate Madara's fire jutsu all on her own. This is the same Madara whose techniques took like a dozen different ninja, all using water style together to counter. We haven't seen her use taijutsu all that much, but other than that, She's one of the most complete fighters on this list. Darui is one of the smartest shinobi we see in the show. While everyone else was having a terrible time against Kinkaku and Ginkaku, he was the only one who figured them and the Sage's ninja tools out. He also has one of the coolest Kekkei Genkai, Storm Release, that can make giant beams of electricity that look like they're straight out of Dragon Ball. Now, we haven't seen much of him as a Kage, but with 15 years of training, I feel like he'd be able to beat all the Kage mentioned so far. We all know how strong the fourth Hokage is. He was the fastest shinobi alive after Minato himself, to the point where Naruto being fast enough to dodge him was a big deal. Fast enough to casually sidestep the Amaterasu. He's also insanely strong, capable of cracking even Madara's skeletal Susanoo, also thanks to Inoki's ability. Just like his father, he often uses lightning armor, so it's not like physical attacks are a great idea against him. He had a pretty good showing against Sasuke at the Kage Summit, even though it was a fight he could have died in. Considering that he had already lost an arm, I scale A slightly below Kage Summit Sasuke. We know that chakra reserves get smaller and smaller as you get old, and that applies also to Hiruzen. He was considered the strongest Kage alive back in the days, capable of using all 5 chakra natures and all the jutsus of the Hidden Leaf. This was shown in his fight against Orochimaru, where Hiruzen kept up with the nerfed versions of the first and second Hokage and their different chakra natures, while constantly keeping an eye on Orochimaru as well. And for those who consider Hiruzen god tier, even above Hashirama, I remind you that while Minato was fighting Obito, a younger Hiruzen couldn't do a lot against the Nine-Tails. In fact, Minato and Gamabunta had to deal with the fox later on. GAARA, despite losing his tail beast, is a lot stronger during the war. For one thing, he can actually sleep now, which means that for the first time he can fight without literally being exhausted all the time. And he even retained Shukaku's magnet release Kekkei Genkai, allowing him to use a lot more sand than before. We saw how strong he is when he managed to keep up with his father's gold dust and seal him. He also ended up taking down the second Mizukage Gengetsu. This was with Inoki's help, but it's still a pretty big feat. We only saw one proper showing of Tsunade's abilities, and that was in the War arc. Every other fight had something that wouldn't make it fair for this list, from the hemophobia in Part 1 to the amount of chakra used to save the villagers in the Pain arc. With the Creation Rebirth technique, Tsunade is basically as immortal as anyone can get. She is capable of instantly healing from any and all wounds like it's nothing, even if it's being impaled by Madara's Susanoo. In terms of physical strength, she's amongst the strongest non-six-pass users, to the point where she managed to blow a massive hole in Madara's Edo Tensei body. Obviously, reanimated bodies are weaker, but this is still Madara and not a wood clone. People don't give Tsunade a lot of credit, but she's way stronger than most people think. Gengetsu is definitely one of the most overlooked people on this list. He can use 4 different chakra natures and yin and yang release. His coolest and strongest ability is definitely the strange mix of oil and water he can use for some crazy techniques. Being an Ozuki just like Suigetsu and Mangetsu, Gengetsu can liquefy his body and, in his case, liquefy in the form of water mixed with oil. His strongest ability is this tiny clone of oil and water that slowly heats up, before starting to rain down an infinite series of explosions on anyone around him. Yes, infinite. The only way to stop this technique is to somehow immobilize the clone while carefully avoiding the explosions. He can also summon a great clam that with its steam can make mirages that are almost impossible to fight in. If you wanted a flex, then Gengetsu was literally telling the shinobi forces how to beat him, and they still couldn't manage it. Mu and Gengetsu did kill each other, so I'd say they're about the same level of strength. Mu is no joke. For one thing, he's one of 2 people that can use Dust Release, which alongside Wood Release is hands down one of the most broken Kekkei Genkai in the show, capable of vaporizing basically anything that can get caught in it. Besides this, Mu can also fly, making him a nightmare to fight for most Kage-level shinobi. The third Hokage is really underrated because he lost to one of Naruto's shadow clones. One thing to keep in mind though is that this shadow clone was way stronger than regular ones, having Naruto put a lot more chakra into it. This clone also got a rundown of every one of the third Hokage's weaknesses and was still pretty much the fastest thing on the planet. If you want to really know how strong the third Hokage is, then keep in mind that he literally fought with the Eight Tails and beat it into submission. I don't mean he beat a Jinchuriki who couldn't use much of the Eight Tails' power, but the actual Eight Tails, the second strongest tail beast. In terms of speed, physical destructive power, and durability, the third Hokage is among the strongest Kage who ever lived. Everything that makes Mu so broken applies even more to Inoki. He can use particle style better than Mu, and he can fly just the same. The only reason he was even brought into the fights was because he was the only person who could deal with Mu at all. His most impressive showings have him almost one-shotting Sasuke with particle style and carrying the fight against Madara, lightning GAARA's Sand and the fourth Hokage, allowing them to deal considerable damage to Madara's Susanoo. He also managed to stop a gigantic meteor, though that was with GAARA's help. GAARA is even stronger in Boruto than he was during the war. I mean, that's what you'd expect, with him having had 15 years to get stronger. He was definitely the Kage with the most impressive showing against the Otsutsukis beside Naruto himself. He was able to hold his own against Urashiki for quite a while. Now, Urashiki may not count in the power scaling, considering that he's a non-canon character, but still we have GAARA keeping up with an Otsutsuki all by himself. Even against Momoshiki, he had the best showing, being able to both react to and momentarily restraining even fused Momoshiki without anyone's help. Kakashi is also way stronger in Boruto than he was during the war. Besides having more experience after the events of the Fourth War, Kakashi just has way more stamina in general, now that he doesn't have a Sharingan constantly draining his chakra. He can't use the Chidori anymore, but Purple Lightning is not only stronger, but more versatile than the Chidori. We even have some crazy feats from the novels, with Kakashi being able to counter a six-path jutsu all by himself. I initially had War Art Kakashi at 867,000 points, and this one at 870. And considering how broken this Kakashi is in the novels, I thought that a buff was needed. Third fastest Kage and the strongest water style user amongst the Kage, considering that Naruto doesn't use this chakra nature all that much. In terms of chakra amount, Tobirama, being a Senju, is second only to Hashirama and Naruto, and he's also one of the most clever shinobi, having invented jutsus like the Shadow Clone, Edo Tensei, and the Flying Raijin. As an Edo, he has impressive speed feats against Jubito, and he was the one who dissected his abilities and found out his weaknesses. Tobirama is the fourth strongest Kage on this list. Even before becoming Hokage, Minato was fighting entire armies all by himself. The Yellow Flash became the fastest being on planet Earth, capable of toying with Kage-level shinobi like it was no big deal. Better at using the Flying Raijin by Tobirama's own admission, what really makes Minato stronger than Tobirama is his ability to enter Sage Mode. And even though Minato can't carry this form for very long, it would be a winning factor in such a close fight between the fourth and the second. Minato is also a master of Sealing Jutsu, capable of redirecting everything from a Nine-Tails tailed beast bomb all the way up to an attack from the Ten Tails itself. He's also stupidly smart, being one of the two people who found a way to counter Kamui in a matter of seconds. Second spot for the real god of shinobi. Remember Madara tossing around the 5 Kage with just air pressure? Well, Hashirama would do the same, if not better, against even more than 5 Kage at once. Wood Release is the strongest Kekkei Genkai in Naruto, capable of subduing tailed beasts and giving Hashirama access to some of the most broken summons. With the Wood Dragon capable of suppressing the Nine Tails, the Golem of overpowering a perfect Susanoo, and the Buddha statue capable of destroying a Susanoo cloaked Nine Tails. This scene of Tobirama trying to protect himself by the collateral damage of the fight between Madara and Hashirama embodies the strength difference between Hashirama and all the Kage beneath him on the list. After the death of Kurama, Naruto's strongest form is an enhanced version of Sage Mode, with Naruto capable of keeping this form for longer periods. Even in his base form without Kurama, Naruto is trading blows and at least somewhat keeping up with fused Momoshiki. This was a fight where he couldn't use any jutsu either, so he's at least way stronger than any other Kage by a mile. It's impossible to say if he's 100% stronger than Hashirama, but I'd say Naruto might just edge him out. We'll just have to wait and see him fight more in Boruto before we can say anything else. What even is there to say about Prime Naruto? In the War arc, when Hashirama realized that Naruto was sharing part of his chakra to keep hundreds of ninja alive, he flat out said that Naruto had almost as much chakra as he had. Now we know that, at the time, Naruto only had the yin half of the Nine Tails, and by the end of Shippuden, became the Jinchuriki of the entire Nine Tails, with both halves of chakra inside him. So even ignoring the fact that Naruto later became also a Six Paths user, he still has double the chakra of Hashirama, proven to be sufficient to take down someone as strong as Toneri, who is on the same tier of power as Jubito. The same Jubito who Hashirama admitted to be weaker than as soon as he made his appearance in the war. So KCM2 Stage Mode Naruto should be able to mid-diff Prime Hashirama, and you can imagine how it would go if Naruto uses Six Paths chakra. That's it for the list. There were a lot of things to go over, but I did my best organising everything, so let me know what you think of this list down below, and until next time, this is AnimeScale out. Bye!